Welcome back to Quick and Healthy with Mr. G. Today I'm going to prepare some salmon. Now this is fresh salmon. You can buy this at any fish market or your local grocery store. I've got 4 nice sized pieces of fresh salmon here. And this salmon is going to be a little different than salmon you might be used to. It's going to be a baked salmon, and it's going to be marinated, or it's going to be seasoned with some fat-free Italian dressing, and then it's going to have a sort of a crust on the top of it that's made out of feta cheese, which has been crumbled, very crumbly, and believe it or not, ground flaxseed, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, and also some very coarsely ground either Romano or Parmesan cheese is in this as well. Now, there's quite a few different spices here. Some olive oil. I've already sprayed the bottom of my baking dish with this olive oil here so that the fish doesn't stick on the bottom. And then I've gone ahead and added the fish into our baking dish. This is just an average sized baking dish. The different spices that we're going to use today are Old Bay seasoning, which I find is excellent for different seafoods or fish type dishes. Some oregano, dried oregano leaves. Now I would normally use fresh oregano. Now a lot of people here, let me address something. A lot of people out there have been writing to me and saying, use fresh ingredients, cook your own rice, don't use the microwave oven, grow your own oregano. Well, I do grow herbs, and I do grow my own herbs and spices, and I do dry my own herbs and spices, but we're at an off season right now for herbs and spices, so I'm sorry, but I don't have fresh oregano on hand. Also, remember the name of the show, Quick and Healthy with Mr. G. Everything that you see should be able to be prepared fairly quickly, and it still should be healthy for you. So, do I use, rice and boil it on the stove top for an hour? No, I don't do that with these meals. Now, do I do that when I actually cook for myself or for my girlfriend Cindy a lot of times? Yes, a lot of times I will use fresh ingredients that I have to cook, which take much longer. But for today, we are using, there's another ingredient, a heart healthy or healthy heart white rice this time. Very low in calories and fat, almost no fat, very low in calories, 200 calories per serving, and only 10 milligrams of sodium. Now, let's get back to this side of the table because all of this goes with our salmon. Now that I've told you why I do some of the things that I do, like use the microwave and so forth. However, today we're not going to use the microwave. In fact, we're not going to have to use a knife to prepare this. It's a very quick dish to prepare. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take my fat-free dressing. Now, if you have more time, you can marinate this. You can put your fish in the refrigerator, in your baking dish covered, and cover it up with this fat-free Italian dressing and go ahead and let that marinate throughout the day. I don't have that kind of time tonight, or you don't have that kind of time to wait for me to make this video. So, I'm just going to go ahead and pour that on top of my salmon and set it aside. Again, that's a fat-free Italian dressing. Just use your favorite dressing. And now that's coating the salmon. Now, I talked about flaxseed a little bit. Flaxseed is an excellent source of omega-3s. Flaxseed has some, if you look it up online, you'll find out that a lot of doctors think that flaxseed has some pretty magical powers. Now, I take whole flaxseed here, and I place it into a coffee grinder. Now, I'm going to go ahead and grind that up. Now, if I can figure out how to put the lid back on, I'm going to step over here and grind that up. You may not be able to see me for a second, but this will only take me a second, because you'll see how long, you'll hear the grinder, and you'll see how long this actually takes to grind up. Here I go, I'm grinding flaxseed over here, and I grind it till it's very fine, if you can hear me over the grinder. That's long enough. Now, whole flaxseed is impossible for your body to digest. It'll go straight through you. This is why we grind the flaxseed. Now, there's flax oil in the flaxseed, and I've already got some flaxseed in my mixture here, but I didn't quite have enough, so I'm going to add a little bit more. If you're wondering how much of this is there, well, I'd say there's probably about an eighth to a quarter cup of the coarsely ground up feta cheese. There's probably an eighth to a quarter cup of the very finely ground, or not finely ground, the very coarsely ground or Parmesan cheese or Romano cheese. You take your pick there, whichever you prefer. and the very finely ground flaxseed, which I'm using in place of like a cracker crumb. Now if you don't like flaxseed, it has a nutty taste. It tastes kind of like walnuts. You can use cracker crumbs if you want to, or dried bread crumbs. Now I'm going to take this mixture and I'm going to scoop it right on top of the fish here, right on top of the salmon. Each salmon's going to get a nice coating of that right on top. There we go. Spread that around a little bit on top there. Looking good. Real good, actually. Now you may end up with a little bit of this mixture left over. Whatever's left over, just dump right on top of the salmon. You can use frozen salmon as well. Just let it thaw. If it's vacuum packed, thaw it underwater in your sink or in a big plastic bowl. I sometimes can't get fresh salmon, so I have to use the frozen salmon. If that's more convenient or less expensive for you, by all means, you can use it. It's not a big deal. What you're looking for here, though, is a raw salmon, not a canned salmon like you would use to make like salmon patties. You don't want that. There. Now I've got my crumbs and my flaxseed, I should say, and my cheeses on top of the mixture. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to take this and set it aside because that'll be placed into a 375-degree oven, which I've got preheating right over here. And we're going to make our side dish next. Now our side dish is just a little bit different. Got a little bit of flaxseed in my bowl here. Take that out. Oh, I forgot the seasoning. Sorry about that. On top of this, we're also going to add some oregano flakes back to our fish. Almost forgot. Just go ahead and just sprinkle that on top as much as you'd like. And some Old Bay seasoning. You take that here and give a nice sprinkle of that right on top of those crumbs. Now you can put that right on top of your fish, under the crumbs or on top, it doesn't matter. It'll all bake down and bake in there. There's our fish. Let me set that aside. Now I'm going to take my rice here, which I've been kind of kneading in the bag here, or breaking up, and I'm going to open that up, and I'm going to put it into this oven-safe and microwave-safe baking dish. There we go. Set that aside. Now I'm going to take my fork and make sure that rice is finely broken up, like that. Once our white, you can use a whole grain brown rice. All I had in my cupboard tonight, sorry, was white rice. Otherwise I probably would use a brown rice for this. You can use your favorite rice. Just make sure that when you buy rice that's pre-prepared like that it's low in sodium. Now I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil. How much olive oil am I adding? Well, probably about 1 tablespoon, I would think, or maybe a little less. Right here, we've got diced tomatoes and reduced sodium black beans. These are organic diced tomatoes, low in sodium. We're going to take our diced tomatoes and we're going to actually drain those a little bit. Let me drain those over here over the sink. Not a lot. I don't want to drain a whole bunch out of them, but just the excess liquid. When there's a lot of liquid in the can, I don't want all that liquid, but I want some of it. Next, we've got our black beans. So this is like a black bean and rice side dish that I'm making here. We're going to pour those right in there. You set that aside. Now, the next step, one more thing I forgot. I'm going to need a fork because you could basically crush your own garlic cloves, which would be preferred. But what I've got here is some minced garlic that's already been prepared. Now I'm going to place some of that on there. And if you ask how much of that I put on there, probably about a heaping teaspoon of that. Now, this is sort of going to be what I call like a Cajun black bean and rice dish. So, wipe my fingers off a little bit. I'm going to take some Mexican-style chili powder. I'm going to pour that on top, and you're wondering how much of that? Well, I would say probably another, again, probably about a half a teaspoon. I've got some ground cinnamon. I've been cooking a lot with cinnamon and ginger lately. I probably put about 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground cinnamon on there. And ground cumin. This is an excellent ingredient. It gives it sort of a Cajun flavor, or a Mexican flavor. And how much of cumin am I going to put on there, ground cumin? I'm going to put on there probably about 1/8 of a teaspoon again, maybe to 1/4 of a teaspoon. Let's set all that aside and let's blend this together. And I'll show you how this looks before we actually pop it in the oven. Both of these dishes are going to bake at the same time in a 375-degree preheated oven. What you want to do is you want to cook them until your salmon becomes kind of, instead of being like translucent or shiny like it is, you want it to be more opaque or more flaky. You also want to place a fork into your largest, fattest piece of salmon, and you want to make sure that that flakes freely away. When it's flaky, then it's finished. And this right here will take just enough time as it takes to get boiling and heating, which is probably about 30 to 45 minutes, which is probably about the same amount of time that we'll need to keep the salmon in. So 30 to 45 minutes. Now, there we go. Let's take a look at that. I'll get a close-up of these both before I pop them in the oven. Come on. Okay, here's our salmon, here's our black beans and rice. Now both of these again are going to be placed into the oven, which you'll see me do here in a second. I want to talk about the salmon and how I arranged it here. The fattest, thickest pieces of salmon are at the ends of the baking dish because they are going to bake the slowest. The thinner pieces are towards the center. Okay, I'm ready to put them in the oven. I've covered my black bean and rice dish. Here we go. The covered black beans and rice and the salmon on the second shelf here. I'm going to go ahead and shut that up. And I'm going to set my timer here for approximately 30 minutes, and I'll check on it. I don't think it'll be done in 30 minutes, but it shouldn't take longer than 45. So, timer is set, and we'll check back in on these in 30 minutes, and I'll show you how they look when they're partially through the cooking time, and they may be done by then. If they're finished, I'll take them out. We'll slice into that. We'll flake away some of the salmon to show you how that looks cooked, and we'll stir up the black beans and rice, and we'll prepare our meal. Okay, there's a couple more things that I wanted to talk about on today's show. Number one here is the flaxseed that I ground. This is the spare flaxseed that I didn't use. Now, if you buy whole flaxseed, you can keep that in your cupboard for quite a long time. It does store better, however, either in the freezer or refrigerator. Now, once the flaxseed is broken up or ground fine like this, the oils, the essential oils that are in the flaxseed, start to escape, and they're outside of the little kernel or seed. Once that happens, those oils have a very short shelf life, unless they're refrigerated. So, if you have any ground flaxseed left over, be sure to refrigerate it, otherwise the oils kind of become rancid. Another question that I get asked pretty often is about the weight loss. How much weight have I lost through eating more healthily? Well, I'm proud to tell you that I've lost 51 pounds over the course of the last 6 months. I started on this little journey back on October 9th when the doctor told me that my blood pressure was on the way up, and I didn't want to go that way. I didn't want to go down that road. So I decided to make a big change in my lifestyle, the way that I eat. I've always been really active, really doing a lot outdoors, hiking, biking, canoeing, you name it, fly boomerang. But I just kept gaining weight. I'm 46 years old, and I guess when I hit my late 30s and 40s, I just kept ramping up there. Well, I decided I didn't want to continue on that journey. So I changed the way that I eat completely, and as you can see through the meals that I show you how to prepare, the key has been basically lower calorie intake, lower fat intake, lower sodium. Don't eat out a lot anymore because restaurants tend to have a lot of sodium, a lot of fat, and a lot of calories. And I've upped my fiber intake as well. Also changed a little bit the times of the day that I eat. I used to eat a lot very late at night. 10, 11 o'clock, it wouldn't be uncommon for me to make a nice meal. Now I try to eat my dinners before 7 o'clock in the evening. Then still have time to go outside and get some of those calories burned off doing some nice outdoor activities. So, 231 pounds is what I started at, down to 179 now. My goal's 160. I hope that these shows have helped and inspired people out there. And like I said, 51 pounds later, and still on my downward journey, when I hit 160, I will let you know. Well, there you have it. We've got our black beans and rice dish, and we've got our baked salmon. Notice that the salmon is nice and flaky. Look at that. That looks fantastic. I think I'll take a bite. I wish everyone was here to join me. That's all for today's episode of Quick and Healthy with Mr. G. That's fabulous. It is. I almost forgot. The total cooking time of tonight's dish was 30 minutes in the 375-degree oven. The black beans and rice were cooked covered, and our salmon was cooked uncovered. How much am I down to now? I am proud to say that I now weigh in at about 100. That's great. Wow, that was really crazy. That was one of my cats. It wasn't an earthquake. A cat came in and actually started to attack one of the legs of the tripod.